like Claressa has been taken advantage of her whole life, okay? And I want to say this because she's been boxing since forever. I don't know her childhood, but I do know that her best friend who grew up with her came out and made some rather disturbing videos about Claressa being taken advantage of, you know, when she was younger as a young boxer by her coaches and getting pregnant and things like this. And so...
Okay, this right here, this is not regular celebrity drama. This is money trail drama. This is receipts drama. This is who really played who drama. Because Claressa Shields just stepped into the ring, and not the boxing ring, and allegedly exposed Remy Ma and Papoose over $900,000. Yes, $900,000. And when I say exposed, I mean people are now asking if this whole thing was planned from the beginning. Now let's rewind for a second. Claressa Shields is not just some random celebrity, she's a two-time Olympic gold medalist, a world champion, a disciplined athlete who built her name off blood, sweat, and actual punches. She doesn't move sloppy, she doesn't gamble her money recklessly. So when her name gets attached to nearly $1 million being spent, people start asking questions. And then you've got Remy Ma and Papoose, hip-hop's so-called ride-or-die couple. For years, they've had this image of loyalty, unity, marriage goals. Papoose holding Remy down during prison, Remy coming home and they building together. That was the brand. But now, the internet is saying that brand might have had cracks all along. Allegedly, $900,000 was involved. Allegedly, funds were spent. Allegedly, things weren't adding up. And now people are asking, was Claressa blindsided? Was this business? Or was this all part of a bigger play? Because when money, relationships, and reputation mix together, somebody always gets hurt. And if this was planned from the jump, oh, this gets way deeper than gossip. Let's break it down piece by piece. So let's start with the number that has everybody gasping. $900,000. Not $9,000. And not $90,000. We're talking almost $1 million allegedly connected to Claressa Shields in some type of financial situation involving Remy Ma and Papoose. And the internet is trying to figure out how in the world a champion boxer ended up mixed into this kind of mess. Now, from what's circulating online, this wasn't just random spending. This allegedly involved business discussions, investments, or joint financial movements that was supposed to lead somewhere productive. Something structured, something organized. Because here's the thing, Claressa is not known for reckless moves. She's strategic, disciplined, focused. She built her empire through fights, endorsements, and smart positioning. So if she put money on the table, it wasn't emotional. It wasn't impulsive. It was supposed to be calculated. And that's what makes this situation feel so strange. People are asking, what was the agreement? Was this an investment into a project? A partnership? A business venture connected to Remy Ma and Papoose? Because $900,000 doesn't just disappear. That kind of money leaves paperwork. It leaves transactions. It leaves expectations. And allegedly, those expectations weren't met. Now let's talk about Remy and Papoose for a second. For years, they've had this united front, loyalty, marriage goals. We built this together energy. Papoose was praised for standing by Remy while she served time. When she came home, they rebuilt their brand as a power couple. So when their names get tied to a financial controversy, it shakes the image. And that's where the speculation gets louder. Some online commentators are suggesting that Claressa may have trusted the relationship dynamic, trusted the couple brand, trusted the unity. But when money gets involved, especially large amounts of money, relationships can shift quickly, because business is not friendship. And if funds were allegedly spent in ways that weren't clearly agreed upon, that's where betrayal starts to creep into the narrative. Now, here's the part that's really making people uneasy. Some fans are wondering if this situation was building quietly behind the scenes, long before it ever became public. Because money issues like this don't explode overnight. They simmer. So the real question becomes, when did Claressa realize something wasn't right? And was she the last one to know? Because if you put $900,000 into something believing you're building, and then suddenly it looks like you funded something completely different, that doesn't just hurt your bank account, it hits your pride. And trust me, we're just getting started. Now here's where things start getting uncomfortable, because the more people dig into this alleged $900,000 situation, the more one question keeps coming up. Was this really just business? Or did personal relationships blur the lines? See, when money moves between strangers, contracts are airtight, lawyers are involved, everything is structured. But when money moves between people who know each other, people who trust each other, things sometimes get a little looser. And that's where problems start. Claressa Shields is used to contracts. She fights for a living. Every purse, every sponsorship, every deal is negotiated carefully. So if she puts serious money into something connected to Remy Ma and Papoose, there had to be trust involved. But here's the tension. When a couple presents themselves as a united front, you don't just deal with one person. You're dealing with both. Decisions feel mutual. Agreements feel collective. And if one side mismanages something, it affects everybody. Now, online chatter is suggesting that whatever this $900,000 was tied to, it didn't unfold the way Claressa may have expected. Some are saying the money was allegedly used in ways that weren't clearly communicated. Others are questioning whether there were promises made that didn't materialize. And this is where the word planned starts floating around. Because if you're moving almost $1 million, that's not accidental. That's strategic. That's intentional. So people are asking, did everyone enter this situation with the same understanding? Or was someone operating with different motives from the beginning? And let's be real for a second. When money disappears or doesn't produce results, people start checking timelines. They start checking statements. They start checking who benefited and who didn't. If Claressa allegedly feels like she funded something that didn't serve her interests, that shifts everything. It changes the dynamic from partnership to possible exploitation. And that's where reputations get tested. Because Remy and Papoose built their brand on loyalty, on being solid, on being different from the rest of the industry chaos. But if financial transparency is being questioned, that brand starts to crack. Now, I'm not saying anyone is guilty of anything. These are circulating reports and discussions, but perception matters. And right now, perception is loud. The internet doesn't care about private explanations, it cares about optics. And the optics look messy. But wait, because there's another layer that makes this even more complicated. And it involves timing. Now let's talk about the one thing that makes this situation feel less like a misunderstanding and more like a setup: the timing. Because when financial issues surface, the first thing people check is when everything happened. When was the money moved? When were the promises made? When did communication allegedly change? And according to online speculation, the timeline is what's raising eyebrows. See, if $900,000 was invested or transferred during a period where everything seemed smooth publicly, that means whatever went wrong happened quietly behind the scenes. No warning, no public tension, no visible fallout at first, and that's what makes people uncomfortable. Because when business partnerships collapse suddenly, it usually means one of two things. Either there were red flags that were ignored, or someone already knew something the other person didn't. Now here's where it gets even more layered. Remy Ma and Papoose have been navigating their own relationship rumors recently. There's been chatter online about tension between them, speculation about outside distractions, questions about whether everything is as solid as they portray. So if financial dealings with Claressa were happening during a period where their own internal situation may have been unstable, that changes the narrative. Because if you're managing a partnership and your own foundation is shaky, how carefully are you handling someone else's nearly $1 million investment? People are now wondering, was Claressa caught in the middle of something bigger? Was this money tied to a joint venture that depended on Remy and Papoose operating as a team? And if cracks were already forming between them, did that affect how the funds were handled? Timing in business is everything. If the investment happened right before personal tension escalated, that's one story. If the money was moved after problems were already brewing, that's a completely different story. And that's why some fans are whispering the word planned. Not necessarily in a criminal sense, but in a strategic sense. Did someone secure funds before a situation shifted? Did someone make moves knowing a fallout was coming? Or was this just poor communication that spiraled into public speculation? Because here's the truth. When money is involved, especially this amount, silence becomes suspicious. If everything was clean and clear, transparency would shut the rumors down quickly. But instead, the internet is filling in the blanks. And when the public starts connecting dots, whether accurate or not, it becomes almost impossible to control the narrative. But wait, because there's another layer here that makes this even more explosive. And it has everything to do with power. Now we need to talk about something deeper than money. Power. Because when you strip away the $900,000, the rumors, the online speculation, what you're really looking at is a power dynamic. Claressa Shields is not someone you play with lightly. She's a world champion. She built her name off discipline, dominance, and not backing down. Her entire brand is strength. So if she feels exposed or misled in any way, this isn't just about finances, it's about respect. And in public life, respect is everything. If Claressa allegedly feels like she was put in a position where she looks naive or taken advantage of, that hits her pride. And when pride gets involved, things escalate fast. Now flip it to Remy and Papoose. They've built their image around loyalty and integrity. Their whole story is about sticking together when it's hard, surviving prison, surviving industry drama, being solid when everyone else is messy. So, when financial questions surface, it doesn't just threaten their wallets, it threatens their legacy. And here's where it gets tense. Because if this situation turns into public back and forth, or nobody walks away untouched, if Claressa speaks up too aggressively, some will accuse her of trying to damage a couple's reputation. If Remy or Papoose defend themselves too strongly, people will say they're dismissing her concerns. It becomes a lose-lose narrative. And let's not ignore the embarrassment factor. If nearly $1 million is allegedly mishandled, misunderstood, or disputed, that's not something you brush off quietly. That's not oops. That's not a small misunderstanding. That's a headline. And once headlines start, egos get involved. Because nobody wants to be the one who looks reckless with money. Nobody wants to be the one accused of benefiting unfairly. Nobody wants to be the one who fumbled trust. So now the internet is watching body language, social media posts, who unfollows who stays silent, who throws subtle shots. Every move is being analysed. And in situations like this, sometimes the truth isn't even what matters most. Perception is. If the public believes this was planned, even without proof, that perception sticks. If the public believes Claressa was blindsided, sympathy builds for her. If the public believes this was just a messy business misunderstanding, it might fade. But here's the real tension. Nobody has fully clarified anything. And silence in a situation involving $900,000 doesn't calm people down. It makes them assume. And assumptions are dangerous. But there's one final piece that might determine how this story ends. And it has everything to do with what happens next. Now let's go there. Because if, and I'm saying if, this situation was strategic from the beginning, somebody made a huge miscalculation. You do not involve a disciplined, high-profile, financially aware athlete like Claressa Shields in a nearly $1 million situation unless everything is airtight. She's not industry naive. She's not chasing clout. She's not new to contracts. So if she's now allegedly questioning where money went or how it was used, that suggests something shifted after agreements were made. And here's the part people keep circling back to. If this was planned, who benefited? Because when money moves, it always lands somewhere. Did a business expand? Did someone cover expenses? Did personal issues spill into financial ones? Or was this just poor structure and poor communication, snowballing into disaster? If it was just mismanagement, that's one thing. Embarrassing but survivable. But if it looks intentional, and that's when reputations don't recover easily. Because you can fix bad math. You can't fix broken trust. And here's something nobody wants to admit publicly. Sometimes partnerships start genuine, and then greed creeps in. Sometimes everyone walks in aligned, and then circumstances change. Sometimes people overpromise, thinking things will work out, and when they don't, they scramble. And scrambling with $900,000 looks ugly. Now imagine this. If Claressa feels like she was positioned to fund something under one understanding, and then later realized the narrative was different, that doesn't just feel like a bad investment. That feels like being set up. And that's why people are asking if this was planned. Because the scale of the money makes it hard to believe this was casual. $900,000 isn't impulsive. That's calculated. And when calculated money goes sideways, calculated thinking is involved somewhere. Now here's the part that could flip everything. If documentation exists that shows clear agreements and transparency, this story dies quickly. If receipts surface showing misalignment or contradictions, this explodes. And here's the truth about situations like this. The first person to bring proof controls the narrative. If Claressa drops receipts, the public shifts toward her. If Remy and Papoose clarify with evidence, the narrative flips again. But until then, speculation fills the silence, and speculation grows louder every day. Now let's land this where it really matters. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about $900,000. It's about trust, image, and who walks away stronger. And that's where things get very interesting. CTA, let's talk about it. All right. I need to know what you think. Do you believe this was just a messy business misunderstanding that spiraled out of control? Or do you think there was strategy behind the scenes from the beginning? Because $900,000 doesn't just move accidentally. And Claressa Shields is not someone who moves blindly. Do you think Remy Ma and Papoose would risk their reputation over something like this? Or do you think the internet is exaggerating and connecting dots that don't actually connect? Drop your thoughts below. If receipts came out tomorrow, whose side do you think they'd favour? And most importantly, if you were moving nearly $1 million with friends or associates, how airtight would your paperwork be? Let's have a real conversation in the comments. If you want more deep dives like this and where we break down the layers, not just the surface gossip, make sure you subscribe, turn notifications on and stay locked in. Because if anything else drops in this situation, we're unpacking it. And trust me, this story might not be over yet.